Hello and welcome to another lecture of the Law of the Sea. Today we are going to talk about territorial sovereignty. I am Muhammad Tahmidul Islam, lecturer, Department of Law, World University of Bangladesh, and this lecture has been produced as part of the online learning system of Department of Law, World University of Bangladesh. In general, territorial right means the exclusive right of a state to exercise its powers and enforce its laws within the boundaries of its territory. UN clauses' contribution to the stability and certainty of the international legal system are numerous and have rightfully deserved the praising of lawyers from all over the world. One of the categories of provisions that has levered that recognition is that allocating jurisdictional rights and duties to the different actors currently engaged in ocean-related activities, also known as coastal, port, flag state, among others. Throughout its 320 provisions, the Convention has regulated conflicting uses of the oceans and codified a delicate system of multiple maritime zones in which progressive territorial jurisdiction applies. In other words, coastal states are granted varying jurisdiction over different zones offshore in a system that may have the undesired outcome of complexifying the already complicated relations between states concerning the oceans. The rights of coastal states to regulate and exploit areas of the ocean under their jurisdiction are one of the foundations of the LOSC, or Law of the Sea Convention. These rights need to be balanced with the freedom of navigation and access to resources outside state control, the freedom of the seas. To demarcate the proverbial rules of the road, the LOSC, or Law of the Sea Convention, permits coastal states to establish several different maritime zones. These zones give coastal states different jurisdictional rights. In general, a state has more rights in zones near to its coastline than it does further into the ocean, which we will see later. The main challenges associated with these zones are how variations in geography affect where zones end and where new zones begin. So now we're going to talk about the determination of maritime zones. Maritime zones are drawn using what the LOSC, or Law of the Sea Convention, calls baselines. So it begins from baseline. Unlike inland waters, coastal waters rise and fall in tides. Rather than having moving maritime boundaries, the baseline is fixed to begin at the low water line along the coast. The low water line is derived from the coastal state's own charts. These zones are measured using nautical miles, a measurement based on the circumference of the Earth. 1 nautical mile equals roughly 1.15 miles on land. Internal waters. Internal waters are all the waters that fall landward of the baseline, such as lakes, rivers, and tidewaters. States have the same sovereign jurisdiction over internal waters as they do over other territory. There is no right of innocent passage through internal waters. So internal waters are actually the rivers, the ponds, the lakes that are inside the land territory of a country. And there is no right of innocent passage in those internal waters. Territorial sea. Everything from the baseline to a limit not exceeding 12 miles is considered a state's territorial sea. Territorial seas are the most straightforward zone. Much like internal waters, coastal states have sovereignty and jurisdiction over the territorial sea. These rights extend not only on the surface but also to the seabed and subsoil, as well as vertically to airspace. The vast majority of states have established territorial seas at the 12 nautical mile limit, but a handful have established shorter thresholds. While territorial seas are subject to the exclusive jurisdiction of the coastal states rights are limited by the passage rights of other states, including innocent passage through the territorial sea and transit passage through international straits. This is the primary distinction between internal waters and territorial seas. There is no right of innocent passage for aircraft flying through the airspace above the coastal state's territorial sea. So this is actually most important point here, that in the territorial sea, the aircraft of other country cannot go without the permission of the coastal state. Contiguous zone. States may also establish a contiguous zone from the outer edge of the territorial seas to a maximum of 24 nautical miles from the baseline. So, contiguous zone actually goes to 24 nautical miles. This zone exists to bolster a state's law enforcement capacity and prevent criminals from fleeing the territorial sea. Within the contiguous zone, a state has the right to both prevent and punish infringement of fiscal, immigration, sanitary, and customs laws within its territory and territorial sea. Unlike the territorial sea, the contiguous zone only gives jurisdiction to a state on the ocean's surface and floor. It does not provide air and space right. Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ. Unlike other zones whose existence derived from earlier international law, the EEZ was a creation of the Law of the Sea Convention. States may claim an EEZ that extends 200 nautical miles from the baseline. In this zone, a coastal state has the exclusive right to exploit or conserve any resources they found within the water, on the sea floor, or under the sea floor's subsoil. These resources encompass both living resources, such as fish, and non-living resources, such as oil and natural gas. States also have exclusive rights to engage in offshore energy generation from the waves, currents, and wind within their EEZ. Article 56 also allows states to establish and use artificial islands, installations, and structures, conduct marine scientific research, and protect and preserve the marine environment through marine protected areas. Article 58 declares that Article 88 to 115 of the Convention relating to high seas rights apply to the EEZ insofar as they are not incompatible with the Part 5. So, from here we can see that EEZ, or Exclusive Economic Zone, is a zone where the economic right of a country is secured. The EEZ is the most misunderstood of all the maritime zones by policymakers in states around the world. Unlike the Territorial Sea and Contiguous Zone, the EEZ only allows for the previous mentioned resource rights and the law enforcement capacity to protect those rights. It does not give a coastal state the right to prohibit or limit freedom of navigation or overflight, subject to very limited exceptions. Continental Shelf. The continental shelf is a natural seaward extension of a land boundary. This seaward extension is geologically formed as the seabed slopes away from the coast, typically consisting of a gradual slope, the continental shelf proper, followed by a steep slope, the continental slope, and then a more gradual slope leading to the deep seabed floor. These three areas, collectively known as the continental margin, are rich in natural resources including oil, natural gas, and certain minerals. The Law of the Sea Convention allows a state to conduct economic activities for a distance of 200 nautical miles from the baseline or the continental margin where it extends beyond 200 nautical miles. To prevent abuse of the continental shelf provisions, the Law of the Sea Convention established the Commission on the Limits of the Continental Shelf, or CLCS. The CLCS uses scientists to evaluate states' claims about the extent of their continental shelves and whether they conform to the Convention's standards. The economic rights within the continental shelf extend only to non-living resources and sedentary living resources such as shellfish. It also allows the coastal state to build artificial islands, installations, and structures. Other states can harvest non-sedentary living resources such as finfish, lay submarine cables and pipelines, and conduct marine research as if it were international waters. So in the EEZ, other states have these powers. They can harvest non-living fishes, non-living resources which are not fishes, and they can lay submarine cables, they can lay pipelines, and they can conduct marine research. But all of this should be done by protecting the environment. If they do something which is detrimental to the environment, they cannot do it. As with the EEZ, continental shelf rights do not grant a state the right to restrict navigation. So, other countries have the right to navigate through EEZ. High seas and deep ocean floor. The ocean surface and the water column beyond the EEZ are referred to as the high seas in the Law of the Sea Convention. The seabed beyond a coastal state EEZ and continental shelf claims is known under the Law of the Sea Convention as the area. So high seas is usually called as the area. The Law of the Sea Convention states that the area is considered the common heritage of all mankind and is beyond any national jurisdiction. So high sea is actually beyond any country's power. States can conduct activities in the area so long as they are for peaceful purposes, such as transit, marine science, and undersea exploration. Resources are a more complicated matter. Living resources such as fish are available for exploitation by any vessel from any state. Although the Law of the Sea Convention does not impose any limitations on fishing in the high seas, it encourages regional cooperation to conserve those resources and ensure their sustainability for future generations. So, from this lecture, we have learned about the different zones of the sea and actually how they operate, what is the extent of their power, what is the extent of their control by the coastal states, and what rights and responsibilities does the coastal state have and other states have regarding those territories. So this is called the territorial sovereignty in the international law of the sea. So I hope you have understood the lecture contents, and if you face any problem understanding the lecture content, you can ask in the comment section. I will answer accordingly. Thank you all for participating in today's class, and I hope to see you all in the next class. Thank you.